Hi, I'm Andrew Armstrong and welcome to the Back Office Teardown Lab. You'll remember this guy. This is the Mega ST2 we were working on last time, and it didn't have a fan. Well, a fan has turned up. I've ordered this 40mm fan without fixings, unfortunately. It's a 1cm fan rather than the 2 that these would originally have fitted, but I think it's going to do the job. So I thought, let's have a quick look to see how to retrofit this. And while we're at it, I want to get sound output from here because the back panel on my Mega is missing. There's a little black panel. So I thought, well, if I'm going to replace that missing panel, why don't I get some sound in there so that I can plug it into my various equipment. So I'm just undoing some of these screws. I'm not sure which hold the chassis together, so I think I'm just going to undoing all of them. I was speaking on some forums, people saying it doesn't necessarily need the fan. It was kind of more something if you had extensions, but I'm like, put the fan in because this doesn't have top louver vents on it like the regular Atari ST. You know, so if you have, especially if you have a monitor or something on there, it's like insulating the top. So you want it, I think personally, you want it with a fan. Yours probably has a fan. If you don't have a fan, maybe you could add one, or you could consider this video how to upgrade your fan if it somehow came without a fan. Look, there's a wood screw in there. I don't think I undid a wood screw last time, so let's see, hopefully, if that's unnecessary. Yes, it is. And yoinking the lid off has disconnected the real-time clock battery again. But that's fine. So that's the hole right there. You can see it's in there and it's pretty mauled up. It's really bent. That is part of this power supply assembly which connects to this back panel. Let's see if it's like a regular Atari ST, because if on the regular Atari ST you undo the 2 front screws, I think it pretty much just rock and rolls out your way. So we'll just undo those. This could be a how to get your Mega ST power supply out as well video, couldn't it? Let's get that off there. Now I'm just going to zoom in a bit so you can see what I'm up to. I'm just going to snip these cable ties here because if we're going to take the power supply out, which I kind of do because I'm curious at what's underneath. But the fact that these snips, this cable tie wasn't pre-snipped almost implies that when they were working on this last time, which is clearly they must have to make this mess, that they didn't do this. So there we go. So how did they get the power supply out? Right, so we've got the one. You've got to hinge it basically. You've got to tip it. There you go. Ah, that came out okay. Let's use the opportunity to have a look under here. Looks like they might have socketed a component here. This is a Texas Instruments. What is that? A TL497ACN. Without taking the whole motherboard out, we'll never really know. Now, just having a look here, this is pretty bent, but I think it's okay. Oh, I've unbent it now, so it's not a problem. So let's have a look at the main power supply while I put the Mega ST elsewhere. So that definitely looks like it's been through the wars. I wonder if that's bent so they could get the power supply out because they'd have to rock it on that bit. It's weird. It's a very weird thing. I didn't notice any screws at all in the case for those. In fact, let me just have a quick look in the case. Yeah, it looks like those would have been screwed up from below potentially, so they would have gone to something in the back. Yeah, that goes to the back of the case. So theoretically, you could probably just cut off that little foot rather than bending the hell out of everything if you wanted to. So let's see if our fan will fit. Well, that's a good sign. It will fit. Direction wise, your guess is as good as mine. I might need a bench power supply to test this one. I think generally, if I'm not mistaken, fans tend to blow. I don't think they suck. I think they blow out the back of the case, but I could be mistaken on that. If I've got it wrong, please let me know and I'll put it in the other way. The correct way. Doesn't really matter though, as long as air's getting in and coming out somewhere. I guess if you blow out the back, it means at least you know that dust and stuff is always getting vented straight out the back, so you're not sucking in necessarily dust. Right, so I've got a 5-volt supply here on the bench with some pre-soldered little wires to poke in holes. So that was my whole pokey wiry setup. Is that on or that's almost silent? So that is blowing towards me at that point. So it would fit this way with the exposed, this part, facing in. Ah, that's quite a nice little movement of air. People tell me that was really noisy on the original ST, so this should be a good improvement if you do have one of the older ones. And you've got the choice of where the cable out the bottom will go. I kind of feel I'm just going to put it that way. Not sure how the original fan was hooked up though. Let's have a look at the main board again and see if we see any obvious pin headers. Oh my gosh, I just noticed something. Look at that chip here. Yeah, someone's been doing some work on this. I've never seen a chips. How can you put a chip in that bad? Did they do it from the top? This could have been a top there, but you couldn't get a solder socket in from the top. Very weird. Well, there's no obvious pin headers for this, so I'm going to work out how we're going to solder it to this power supply instead. So the first thing though, I'd like to fit it. So I don't have the actual fittings for fans. Fans do have specific fittings for case enclosures, so if you do have an old PC case or something, you might have them. I'm going to see if any of my self-tappers will do the job, and it looks like they probably won't. Apart from these massive ones. That might have problems getting it back in the case when if we use these, but I'm going to have a go anyway. I might have to test that the fan still works after using these, because I'll put so much stress on that plastic frame. But I think you know the ones I'm talking about, the actual screws. They're a very small tapered screw, a tapered head rather screw. Get in there. And they've got a very coarse thread. They're almost a self-tapper. So they're obviously a plastic, like a tapper for plastic. Now remember, this metal was bent, so that could affect this fan's ability to rotate. I think 2 screws will be enough, so we'll not put any more screws in, but we will test it one more time before we put everything together. So I'm just going to poke the black wire in, poke the red wire in. Now if it blows the wrong way, don't feel tempted to change the polarity, because I'm not sure. That's going alright. Let's see if I can feel. The breeze is so slight, it uses 195 milliamps. There you go, should be okay. So we just have to look now at the board, and I'll turn the soldering iron on. And you can see, if you look on your board somewhere, you've got a 0 volts and a 5 volts. We know the red wire is a 5 volts. So we could solder this underneath unless we figure out if that red wire goes anywhere useful. So I'm going to put on my voltmeter. I'll do that in case it does, because it will be easier for you to do this project if you don't have to root around underneath on the PCB. Yeah, I was kind of hoping it would say that. That's good. Now where are we going to get a good 0 volts from? It doesn't look like we got anywhere up here. In fact, even I'm on the black wire, and that's not even reference to chassis, it's floating. I think the best thing to do is just solder on the bottom. You could get one of them on there, but you have to get both if you want this to work. So let's just pop this off. Now this is pretty standard. Again, these all look bent up. Like, I suspect somebody's been in there. Let's have a look again. Because these are supposed to have a varnish on there to stop them being messed with. This definitely has had someone work on it. Be interesting if we can see what went on when we take this off. I've never really seen a blown up Atari power supply. They're pretty hardy beasts. Obviously they do go, but it's not that common. No obvious signs of work there, but what we'll do now, we'll take this wire, we'll cut the ends. We'll just strip that. So you've got your positive and you've got your negative. Now if you're going to do a really nice job of this, get in there, twist those up. Let's go through the hole. How to tin. And then we'll just tin those. My soldering iron even on? 283 degrees C it's on. It's on cool for me. It's on a pretty cool setting. So I'm just looking at the back, looking where that red 5 volts. This is the 5 volt rail, and those three there are those three you see there? They're the ground, and this is the 5 volt rail. So nice and easy. Before we solder on there though, I'm just going to touch and re-tin these, and this is probably a good opportunity to turn your soldering iron up if you need to. Come on. It's got in there. So that was the negative. And my fat fingers will not allow me to get in there, so I'm just going to use some tweezies. Just like that. Just double check you've got no shorts. I feel it could probably be a little bit more on. So the insulation is definitely out of the way. That's good. And then we have the 12 volts to do, and again, just get tweezers, twist it around. Hopefully you can see that. Just like that. Now if you do know where these were originally connected, I would be definitely interested in knowing. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to put this cable inboard underneath and just have a quick look, make sure. Do you know what, don't put it underneath, because remember we do have a main section there. I would just leave it out, it's fine, leave it out, we'll route it later. It did look like it was reasonably okay, but you don't want something to short out with the mains, do you? That would be good. Cool. I was going to say that would be good. That would be the opposite of good. That would be no good. Se nada good. Let's get that in. So the exciting thing about this whole build is whether or not it's going to go into the case with those big ass self-tapper, domed self-tappers. This is so weird, this power supply. Look at this. It's like, why has it got these drilled out holes like that? You can see there, it's 2 holes. Someone had to modify this? Does it even have, it has an Atari logo on it? Atari Rev 5 R90, no that's the resistor. Atari Rev 5 C 100,000-001. It's one of the early ones? Who knows? Yes. Yes. I can't help looking at this without feeling it could probably benefit from at least a very tiny bit of a dust here. While I'm in there, and let's give it a little reseat. They've all got clips on them both. Nice to give it a little reseat anyway. It does have 2 power connectors here, which is interesting. Not sure which one I took this out of, but I think they could be interchanged. We'll know soon enough. So we can poke that through. Yeah, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. If anything, the bentness of the case is helping it. What is this? A bit of wire stuck under its leg. And that was the bit of wire that was cable tied to it, so we'll decide on that routing once we put these screws back in. I have to say I do like the old Mega. God, I'm really hating this glue gun. The more I'm looking at this glue gun, like Gotek, in all these different angles, it makes me shudder really. Interesting enough though, this is a 2 meg. I'm wondering if you just populate these other chips, I wonder if you'd get a 4 meg, it would just work, or if you've got some other mods you'd have to do. Looks like a relatively easy mod if these weren't all blind. They're all filled in, these holes, but you could just, I guess, sit there with a solder sucker, unsucker it, sucker. Let me get that cable tie we're going to need. I've got a nice black cable tie. We can decide about this fan. So if you want to, I think, I could put the wire here between these capacitors, and that'll stop any errant fingers snagging it, I think. Don't think there's too much danger of noise from the fan coming back up there. And then I'm just going to cable tie these together. And this capacitor here is so long. It does make me wonder if somebody's fitted an aftermarket C4 there. It's 4,700 microfarads at 16 volts, allegedly. Do this here. Not round the capacitor. Boom. And I think that's it. Job will be a good one. So before I go on to the other mod we were talking about, which was getting the sound out, I'm just going to go find a bench power supply and we'll see if that comes on when we turn this on. Clearly I said bench power supply when I meant power wire. Anyway, have a look at the fan there. I've got the power switch in me hand. Fan goes on. Fan goes off. Fan goes on. Fan goes off. That switch does sound a bit dodgy though. That is something that's going to need some looking at in a little while, I should think. But for now, it's alright. It's got a bit stiff. Now, on Atari ST, I'm going to say the ST, not STE because it is stereo. It apparently only has mono sound. And the sound is carried on pin 1 of this connector. So pin 1 is one of those top ones. I'm not sure from left to right or right to left, but it's one of those top corners. And we're going to have a look to see if we can get them. And they're very easy to get to. So this will be a pretty easy mod if you want to just jump right in. You could actually just solder straight to here or to here. Would be nice to know which is which though. And hook up a back panel with an RCA. And you can see that pretty much is the back here. This slot that's cut here, that's what you've got to work with because that is actually the back right there. So you just need something in here with an RCA connector. So I'm going to gather up some parts and we'll see if we can make something that'll sit there nicely. I've cut out a piece of double-sided copper-clad board and I found these quite ancient, really ancient RCA sockets, but I think they'll be okay. They still function. So what I'm going to do is I'm trying to see if I can solder them straight onto this board because I'm pretty sure the sound ground is the same as the system ground on these. In fact, I know they are because I didn't see a sound ground on the monitor port. So I've got that feeling I can sort of make bus bars of these. So I'm just going to pop that there like that. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do with them. Just perching them precariously. Now my soldering iron is set to 300, but I might need to go way hotter. Problem is with these, say, RCA connectors, they're so old, solder doesn't want to stick to them. There's a tiny bit there. Oh, almost. Let's see. The solder must flow. Saying that, it doesn't seem to want to stick to my copper board either, so let's turn up the heat. And you're probably asking, why are you bothering with this? Why don't you just drill holes and fit it? Because that's drilling holes and fitting it, isn't it? That's just extra hardware that I can't, if I can avoid using, I will. So that one looked like it took. So if I can actually get it to take now on here. Oh, it is. There we go, we've got a bridge. I think I'll leave that alone. Let's do the other side before touching it up. That way it's got its own, pressure. It's got some downforce holding itself on for me. Come on, solder. Ugh. So I'm just well into this new solder reel, but there's something odd about it. It's got so much tension on it. Yeah, that one went really well. Look at that. That's a good job on that side. Just go revisit the other side again now. Nobody's going nowhere. Stay. Boom. Yes. That's definitely the way to do it. Lovely, lovely bit of braze in there. That one lined up. So the sound goes on the centre pin, and this is all ground. Now I don't know if it's feasible for me to hook this into the shielding, because the shielding is also ground, and this is double-sided and made of metal, so it could just auto-magically do that for me. But I don't think I want to rely on it. It's nicely fed through and hot. Putting through a lot of temperature into this thing. Lucky it's not like an integrated circuit. Probably another reason is you're asking, why have you put stereo on something that's mono? I want to use the Atari ST cables, and they always have the stereo phonos, so I can just use the same set of cables across everything if I do that. Why? So that's a bit hot to touch, I will admit, a bit hot to touch. Now, if we're going to make this mod, we can decide if it's something we want to be removable in the future, and if we do, all we need to do is use these clips. And it just happens I have a couple of circuit clips that are already tinned, so I've got a tiny bit of Kynar on them, which, yeah, for sound should be alright. They're not shielded. If you get a lot of hum and noise, that's probably a cause, and then you could decide if you want to use a shielded set instead. So I'm just going to do a ground one while I'm at it. That's nice and easy. Oh, I can't just jump in and do the actual one that carries the signal, because we need to create a bit of a bus bar between those two contacts first. So let's have a little route around my old wire pile, and we've got something that will do the trick there. Twist it up. And we're ready to go. Tin it there. So I do already have a tinned pad here from previous experiments, so that's just soldered to the tin pad. Ow, 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 it's all getting a little bit warm, as you can imagine. Probably as well because I left my soldering on 1,000,000 degrees. I'll turn that down as well. It's jumped off. Don't jump off. I want you both to play nicely. This is what happens when you try cutting corners, doesn't it? Right, now they'll play nicely. Another problem when you run your soldering iron this hot is that the solder takes much longer to cool down. Well, that's the end result. Again, use some shielded thicker wire if you're doing it, but kind of a half experiment for me, because I wasn't sure which one pin 1 is. Still have to figure that one out. Get the trolley back on the deck. Panel wise, that's pretty easy to fit, so it just slides in between the shieldings, a little overhang. You can see on the back, that's how that looks. Before I do anything else though, let's see if the case goes on over the top. You can see what the end result will look like. And it pretty much does. Okay, it's a bit wonk because I've not secured anything, but there you go. That's kind of how it is. Excuse the wonkness. Urgh. Ding ding. It looks so bad. It looks so bad. So let's find a suitable position on this motherboard for the ground. Now I can be pretty sure that the chassis. Where are we? It's going to be ground. So here's ground one from the Gotek port. I'll find it. Yeah. Everywhere is the shielding. Even my board is actually registering as ground because it's touching so much metalwork. Let's see if the chassis ground anywhere. So you can just literally hook this up anywhere. But I would like to find a more positive pin on something. So we've got the cartridge port here. That didn't seem to be good. I would be really suspicious if pin 40 wasn't ground. So I'm going to go for pin 40. It's marked. Oh no, the wire's not quite long enough. Let's see if we've got anywhere else to go. And you can look sometimes on the PCB. So you'll see that's actually, I think, a ground plane here. Let's check it out. It is. Ish. I say it is and then it stops. Oh, that diode's not actually connected to that ground plane, but this one is. There we go, little capacitor, C20. And I'll zoom in so you can see where I'm prodding right now. This guy. And then I'm just going to connect this little hook up to the leg there. Ding ding, it's not going anywhere. So the last little thing I have to do is hook up this next bit to one of these pins, and there is a really good guide online. I'm going to put Atari ST pin out straight into Google. In fact, I wrote Atari ST pinoir pin out. That's what we want. And there is it this one, Info Coach? There is one. Ah, there we go, that's it. So there's a sort of French website, it's a .fr, and I'll turn my phone brightness up to max. And it has pretty much every single interface on here. So there is a guide up here, if you can see it, just here. MIDI, serial, cartridge, parallel, DMA, video interface. The following table shows the pin out of Atari 13-pin DIN female connector from the front external side. So that's just looking at it. So if we were looking at it, it would be that way. So that means pin 1 is right here. So that is where we got to hook our thing. Just like that. So I've plugged in the Mega 2. You can see how the audio leads hook up just straight in the back. I'm not sure I'm going to bother painting those grey. I think it looks quite good as it is. There's the external floppy drive because of course there's a Gotek. I've got an ST format magazine. I do already know the sound works because when you hit a key on Atari, that's the key beep. And just to show you, I'm not trying to fool you, it is the Mega, not the STE hooked up. So if we go to drive A, oh bugger, oh bugger, drive B, isn't it? Drive A has got our Gotek in it. And I don't know, puzzle, we're going to see if any of these have sound. No. ST format, your puzzle disc. Oh! Side B, that's where. This is the olden days, isn't it? Where not everything had two sides. Not much on here though. This one looks more promising. Got a copy of Sensible Soccer on it. God, I remember this back in the day. This isn't my original cover disc, but it was a cover disc. I bought a box of cover discs not so long ago, and they have the discs I had. Bring me on a journey down memory lane. Soccer.perg. So hopefully it'll have sound and we can witness the glory of stereo, or I guess mono times 2 sound. But it's stereo, it's still coming out of 2 ear holes. Would that be into 2 ear holes? And while we're at it, let's see if our little fan seems to be working. And of course, if you're going to test a fan, you need some old money. Of course, you need £1 from wherever that is from. Cyprus pound. So let's see if a Cyprus pound works. Yeah, it's got about as much blow as an asthmatic gnat, but maybe that's all you need. Come on then, where's my sensible sounds? Oh, there is sound. I can't play it because I don't have a joystick. Let's try to play with a mouse. Definitely not going to work. Yay! So yeah, sound works. Just going to put the screws in and we're done. Just before I wrap up this project, I wanted to show you one small mod I did when I got back to the bench, and it was a really easy thing but really nice. Look at that there. So that actually now has it permanently grounded to the ground shield, so you could remove this black wire down here if you want, but I did it so that the ports were nice and firm and won't shift around, and it really is become a fully functional part now of the ST with the lid on. So I probably will just whip this off a bit later and pop the lid on and I'll be done. So thank you so much for joining me on my babbling adventure. I know I'm not the most coherent sometimes on a Saturday morning, no sleep, but I think this was well worth doing. I just noticed a bent pin here. Don't like the look of that. There we go. That straightened it out. So something might have been in here. Maybe it had an upgrade. Everything seems to work as expected. So it's pretty good. If you're going to have a go with that. Nice and simple. Don't cut the case though if you need to. And go to my shop at backofficeshow.com to have a look at my cartridge port add-ons for the Atari ST range. And I haven't showed you a lot of those yet. Go and have a look for yourself, but you might catch them before I make a video about them. Thanks for watching.